Loochador time. Billy Liucci, David Nuño here on this Friday, April 14th, right before the spring game presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Whatever you want, you can get out of Academy Sports and Outdoors. The barbecuing equipment, you need footballs, you need soccer stuff, you need whatever. They got it there at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Great clothes, too. Billy Liucci with us. Hello, Billy.
Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Academy Sports and Outdoors. No,
I thought it was the right stuff.
The right stuff.
Sports and Outdoors.
Yeah.
That's the difference?
No,
Yeah,
the right stuff at the right price.
Right.
Academy.
He's like the right stuff, the right price.
I think we got it wrong.
I think I'm doing it right with at least the
hands?
The little note music.
The right Academy. I don't know. Hey, so we got the spring game tomorrow, and it's a good time to kind of circle back and chit-chat a little bit about everything that we...
But there's no information. Jimbo's shut it down.
I haven't said that?
No, I'm quoting the board. Like, there's a couple of our posters that like to... they act like they know more than they do. And because somebody told them, well, it's a guy in Bright. Well, not everybody in Bright knows what the hell they're talking about. Well, it's a big donor. Well, not all of them know what the hell they're talking about. Well, a lot of them do in both, but you just don't assume somebody knows what they're talking about. When they say there's no information coming out, you're going to learn otherwise during this podcast. And I hate to burst the bubble of, Jimbo's got it locked down. He doesn't want anything. That's not what he's doing. It's not what he's trying to do.
But every coach wants to lock
But
down.
he's not. It's not what he's trying to do. It's not. It's just false. It's not. There was no thing said like, hey, let's keep no information coming out of our. First of all, that's stupid for a head coach to do. Let's get no exposure for our program. Let's get no one talking, no buzz, and that's not what he's doing. Secondly, it's actually not at all what he's doing. But there are a couple people on there that. They post a lot. They're thought of as insiders or experts, and they say it's true because they think it is because of what they see, and then someone says it. It's not true. And like I said, you're about to have your bubble burst, so let's get to it.
All right, so let's just start things off.
I've just been waiting because the day-to-day, I think Sandhop's done a good job of providing them with the daily stuff, and then if there's anything significant, he's either talked about it in there, like whether it's guys working at different positions or who's practicing, who's not, between that and Jimbo's pressers. But now we're going to go break it down, and we're going to talk about individuals and position groups and kind of where the spring's gone.
All right, so general overview, how you think everything has gone leading up to tomorrow.
Even when we've been out there and we've talked about it, there's a different vibe. There's a different energy. If I had one thing to say from our brief periods of time at practice, it's a lot more positive. There's a better energy out there, coaches and players alike. That's the first thing. And as I talk to people that are out there every day throughout the whole practice, the entirety of practice, they say the same thing. People within Bright, on every level of it, the handful of people that have been out there, they really haven't had a lot of donors out there this spring, which is abnormal, but because of the construction, there hasn't been a lot of that. But everyone that has been out there, that's one of the first things they say. Jimbo Fisher, contrary to what a 2-minute 60-second sound bite that went viral to start spring, and everyone took it and ran with it, including the dipshit Longhorns on social media. Bobby Petrino, his presence is very noticeable, and it has allowed Jimbo Fisher to take a very different approach. And again, this is from what I've seen. This is also from what I've heard. Again, when I talk today, I'm talking about every level of this. If you guys think that I talk to, one staffer, one player, and one, ancillary, you just don't really quite understand what it is that I do. Some of these people think I exist on Twitter, just to banter and talk. I'm as good at doing this as anybody in this country that does it, which is understanding the inner workings of a program and getting information. And that's what we're doing. Again, this is the exercise today. This is not coming from one or two people. This is what I have gathered over the last month from a lot of different sources and avenues. So when I tell you this, none of it's coming from a specific place. It's all coming from a lot of different places. Jimbo Fisher out there, it's different, and it's noticeably different. And he is doing a lot more sitting back and observing and stepping in, and whether it's any different position on the field, it's no longer just the quarterbacks. Bobby Petrino is the one primarily working with the QBs, and Jimbo's able to watch quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends, O-line, and it's still mainly the offense, but like he said the other day, he's over there with plenty of input on the defense as well. Coach Petrino, I'm so convinced, David, that Bobby Petrino is going to call plays that I don't need Jimbo to say it to the media. I don't need him, and Jimbo's going to be heavily involved on game day, but he's going to be able to coach his football team because he's got a guy that has won a couple SEC West titles built on the strength of his offense running it. He's got a guy that was hired as an NFL head coach because of how his offense runs running it. He's got a guy that turned down Auburn to leave Louisville running it. He's got a guy that coached and developed a Heisman Trophy winner and an NFL Pro Bowler running it. Feels good about that. That's why he made that hire. Why didn't he make it right away? Because we knew there was going to be blowback. Well, why didn't he hire him at Missouri State? Because they knew there was going to be blowback. So you got to see, is there somebody you can get that maybe doesn't come with that? And then they went and looked, and it was like, I'm not saying that they sat there and went, there's no one else we can hire but Petrino, and he's the best. He might end up being the best. But he's a guy that they were very interested in hiring from day one. He's in here. The returns have been pretty damn eye-opening, David. When you talk to players, you talk to people in Bright, you talk to other staff members that are working with Bobby Petrino. I had one person tell me it's been incredible, like him in the building, and just people that worry about it being a fit. Are him and Jimbo going to see eye to eye on 100% of things? No. And let me tell you something. Neither would Jimbo Fisher and Garrett Riley.
Neither do we.
But I'm saying.
And we would get along great.
Yeah, but Jimbo Fisher could have hired like Garrett Riley and everybody would go, woo-woo. And do you think they would have seen eye to eye?
No.
In fact,
that's okay.
it might have been even worse because Jimbo might not have trusted the young guys. And I know, I'm not saying that Garrett Riley, I think he's going to do great things at Clemson. But I think he would have been in a better position at Clemson to succeed than he would have here.
Sure.
Because I think Jimbo would have been like, I need to know more about you before I can just let you, because my job's, at stake here. This program's future, my goals of a championship are at stake here, and I'm entrusting it to you. You don't have a lot of experience. I don't know a lot about you. This is different. So I think Garrett Riley's in the best place for him at Clemson with Dabo, and I think Jimbo got the best type person for him, which is a guy with Bobby Petrino's resume and skins on the wall and his reputation and Jimbo's knowledge of him. So are they going to see eye to eye and everything? No, but that would have been the case with anybody. So I think too much has been made of that, and I think this has been a very...
That's the best thing that can happen, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, you don't want a yes man as your OC.
Nope, not right now.
No.
Not ever, but especially not right now. Especially when Jimbo, his whole career is the OC. And I don't know if anything else would have worked. And I'm not saying it's a guarantee this will work, but I'm really encouraged after 15 practices and a couple months. I'm really encouraged by what I've heard and seen. And I'll tell you the other thing we're not talking about enough. I broke that he was here. I talked about the magnitude of it, and I don't know if people realize how much a guy like Jim Chaney, I see him out there every day at practice. He stands back there kind of behind the defense, different vantage point. I mean, this guy was with Joe Tiller and Drew Brees at Purdue, winning Rose Bowls. This guy's been hired at OC Tennessee twice. Some successful offenses at Arkansas under Bielema. He was hired as an OC at Georgia. I mean, pretty brilliant offensive mind to go with. Absolutely one of the most brilliant in Petrino.
And he's vocal at practice.
Yeah, he is. And if you want to see what that's going to look like during game weeks, and I've heard that every day after practice, those two walk back to Bright and they're breaking down practice immediately. And I don't think I think people might be underestimating like how much football acumen you added to that offensive staff room when you added those two dudes. And during the season with him as an analyst, when game week rolls around and Jim Chaney walks up and he goes, "There's your scouting report on Sunday. Okay, we just played Bama, and now we're going on the road to Tennessee. There's your scouting report." And that's going to be as good a scouting report as there is.
Yep.
And you're going to have it. And this was a huge addition that we don't talk about enough. I actually heard he went in, and this could be, I believe who told it to me. He went in on his own volition and went in and broke down every recruit A&M's looking at on the offensive side of the ball and kind of gave his own analysis of it. This is like, how, and I never tried to downplay this. I thought it was really significant. You know how Texas fans are just going on and on about adding Gary Patterson, and he wasn't a coach, but what he meant. And you looked at their defense was a lot better this year.
It was.
And I think Jim Chaney and his resume, and don't downplay because he wasn't a head coach for as long as Patterson. It has the potential to be that type of addition until, as he's waiting to land his next high-paying job. So, anyway, all that out of the way, we can talk about team. But the Petrino addition has been really interesting. And I also heard that once they get that thing going in practice and they get out of script and they start, I guess for lack of a better word, call it going live. I've heard, you've gotten some flashes of what Petrino can do when he gets into that play call and rhythm and his guys are executing. Yep. And they've seen it across the street now. They've seen it live and in action.
Well, let's kind of go through and, I think quarterback is an obvious starting point, but I don't want to start there. I want to start with the offensive line because to me, it always begins and ends there.
Yeah.
But I really think for this team, it begins and ends with the offensive line.
I agree with you. We talked about that on radio. If you tell me Connor Wigman makes the jump or Max Johnson puts it all together and in his final act before going on in the NFL with that arm of his, but for Wigman to make that jump and be one of the rising stars in the SEC, which is what I predict we'll see. Or for Max Johnson to take A&M to a New Year's Six bowl and be that steadying presence on this whole football team that they could so dearly use. For either of those things to happen, there has to be a running game. You've got a lot of youth at running back, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But there has to be a running game to take pressure off of these quarterbacks, and there has to be protection when they drop back to throw. They have to have time to throw the football. There's one group that can check both those boxes, and that's the O-line. And I don't think there's any excuse this year for this group to not be really good. And I said earlier, I don't have to yell and scream and go, by God, Adazio's got to have a better performance in year 2, and he's got to prove it or else. Like, I get it. Like, it was a rough year for the O-line last year. I didn't like the transition from one coach to the other. It didn't go smoothly. I didn't like the performance of a lot of the players. I hated the injuries that happened. It seemed like, again, when I say the adjustment didn't go smoothly, I think some guys didn't take well to the coaching. And then you say, well, is that the coaching style or is that the kids? And I think the answer is in the middle.
Yeah.
I think, hey, sorry, we're going to be a little more demanding. Sorry, we're going to be more rough around the edges. What do you think you're going to have through your career in the NFL? You want to make a lot of money playing this game, you may as well get used to the harsh critique now, but also on the coaching side, like, do you look at your players and go, okay, it's 2023, I need to kind of adapt to that. And I think from being out there a little bit, and you and I talked about it, it seems like both of those things are happening. Not everybody's going to like it. You know, Wyckoff left, and I don't know how much that had to do with it, but I think it was more playing time related. I get annoyed, and I don't like. I saw like Barstool, tweeted the Wyckoff talking about what a big blow it was for them to leave. And it's just like, be a little more educated than just looking and say, oh, they lost their starting center. A, that wasn't true. B, and people are always fans of other schools. Wow, they lost a SEC all-freshman team. Guys, like, if you don't know, and I think Wyckoff could have been good down the road.
He got better last
year. He got
year.
thrown into a bad situation last year and really struggled. It was a tough deal, and he struggled. He had a good spring, and then when the season started, it didn't go well. Do I think he's going to be a good lineman somewhere? I do. I believe in him. What was on the field last year is why Naboo was put in there to push, and Naboo's had a great spring. So you want to go in and talk about the O-line. 2 revelations this spring have been Mark Naboo, who can play center or guard. Big, wide body, flexible, agile, one of the more promising young players on the roster. And then Chase Besantis, who his spring's been as good as anybody on that offense. And think about what I just said. His spring's been as good as anybody on that offense, including the veteran O-lineman, including quarterbacks and receivers. And his spring has been he is one of the storylines and one of the best performers, not best freshman, not best O-lineman, one of the top performers this spring. He's nasty. Dudes don't like going against him in one-on-ones. He'll finish you. He's not afraid to mix it up. And he's big, and he's physical and strong and mean. And talented, athletic as all get out. So, do you want a true freshman starting on your O-line? No, not in the SEC. You never do. Have some of them been very successful? Yes. I was talking to my friend yesterday, and he was trying to say, you don't want it. No way. Nope. And it's like, I get it, and you're right. But there's been a couple instances where you'd be
on this
wrong.
team right now. Bryce was good at.
They were, but they got it handed to them for a few weeks.
Sure, yeah.
So you don't want it. Remember how they looked against Arkansas? They got destroyed.
Yeah, they did.
Bryce would tell you he got destroyed. Fathery against New Mexico.
There was a curve. Yes.
Yeah, so you don't. Kenyon Green. I remember Kenyon Green early in his true freshman year getting work. He's a first-round pick. He was an All-American, one of the best O-linemen ever here. I remember seeing Luke Jokel. Guy was running circles around him for Florida International, and then a week later, Hugo Chinasa from Oklahoma State, who only could dream of having Luke Jokel's college career. Outland Trophy winner, number 2 draft pick. But at one point, you're a true freshman. Even Jake Matthews started by about game 6. So
there should be a ramp-up time.
Absolutely, and that's what you hope, even for Chase. But damn, he's good. And that's really exciting for not only this year, but especially moving forward. But he's been one of the stories. Naboo, I think Deuce Fathery with less weight. You won't see him tomorrow. He's banged up. He hurt a knee. Without going into detail, I'll just say it's not an ACL. He will be back, and he will be ready for fall camp.
Yep.
Some people are going to see he's 6'8" sitting out there, and everybody's going to freak out. But so it's not. It's not some kind of season interfering or season ending thing. He's not going to spring game tomorrow. So, but Fathery, lighter, was moving better. I thought, from what I saw and heard, had a really nice spring too. Those are kind of, to me, the main story. And then Cam Dewberry looks like a guy that's taken that next step. Again, mid-season came on that Alabama game and had a pretty good finish because he wasn't thrown out there.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
To the Wolves right away. And now he looks like a guy that, like,
although he was thrown to the Wolves in that game.
Yeah,
he had to
definitely
come in.
But now you're year 2. You've started a few games. he got that out of the way, and he looks like a guy that's confident, knows what he's doing. I love the idea. Man, I'm that interior I'm really excited about. In particular, Foster, and then the senior in Layden, Dewberry and Naboo. Those four guys. And Remington Strickland's been a night. Jimbo mentioned him. He's a guy that, needed a year. He came from a very small private school over there right by my house in Sugar Land. Really small level. Competition was nothing that could even remotely challenge him. And now, as we go into, what is this? As we go into this next year for him, year 2, he's impressive looking, by the way, when he goes out there. He's not like Naboo, where this is this giant frame, but he's just muscle and athleticism. So I'm really excited about the interior. And then when you talk about, David, tackle, that's a position that's concerned me for several years here. Depth, talent. Again, I've told people they're so fired up about Zune, and you got Trey Zune coming back, and it hit him go look at him against LSU, and towards the very end of the year. Fathery, Basantis' emergence, Zune. Crownover now, Demetrius Crownover going into he's year 3 now for him. Is he 3 or 2? They moved him from D end to tight end to tackle. And Aki. There was speculation about Aki. He's 100% on the team and is a guy that has impressed this spring at tackle again, because he's a guy that got some experience. And you talk about throwing in the fire. He got his first career start at tackle against Alabama and Will Anderson, and got worked in that game. He came in and told me, well, how'd it go? Well, every time we got inside the 20, they moved Will Anderson to my side. How'd that go? Not good, I don't think, Billy. He was honest. But now, tackle depth is there. It really is. And it's been a while, I think, since we can say that. And the good thing is you're returning 2 starters at tackle. Aki's, a few years into this thing now. Crownover's a couple years into this thing. So you have not only experience but depth at the position, and that's exciting.
All right, we'll go from there to quarterback, because all eyes are going to be on what these guys do tomorrow, September, and on.
Yeah, and that's going to come with it. I wish they could just not do a spring game on a 50-yard field and have everybody try to break it down. But it is what it is. Whatever. The program has bigger things to worry about than weather. And if the guys look great, they might perform better than they did in any individual practice. And then what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't tell me, they did great when the lights were on. A few thousand people here at a 50-yard field, in a glorified scrimmage too. So don't take too much of the good or read too much into the bad. But over spring, I think quarterbacks were good. I know a couple days ago, some people told me Connor was dealing. He had a great day. But I think overall through the spring, the quarterbacks were good. And I don't think anyone, you just say, man, that guy he's ready. It's time. There's a transition, David. It's Jimbo can downplay it, but there's a lot. The offense is different, and the verbiage is different in a good way. He's right where they marry the languages. But what Jimbo didn't say to the media the other day, he kind of said it, but you got to – there's part of him, he's just not going to give in. Like if I told him this was this year's game ball, he'd say, no, the game ball this year is going to have, and it's like it's going to have a different logo, which it is. It's going to have a different logo. But
it is the game ball.
It's the game ball. So he's going to push back always and not kind of give you what you want, because he knows you're trying to get him to say it, especially when it's like, oh yeah, I do need help with this offense. Why does he have to say it when he went and hired Bobby Petrino? Does that not say it?
And he also said,
does that not
last year.
answer the question? Do you think you need help with the offense? How does that not answer it? And when they asked him, would you be willing to hire a new play caller and look into turning that over? He said yes a year ago, or late in the season.
Ago, yeah.
Then he went and hired a guy. It's never enough for us, and by us I mean media and fans, and so he pushes back. So what you don't get out of him is the reality, which is, yeah, they are changing the verbiage some in a way that's going to be more easily digested by the players. And that's where getting a secondary voice can come in. And you don't just say, here's how Jimbo and this offense did it, and here comes, let's throw it away. And that's what he was saying. But in that marriage of it, there is the part of what they're going to try to do is make it easier for the kids to get it in and out and process it. And then, in other words, by doing so, you can play offense faster.
Yep.
And he did reference that in a little bit. And that's something that everyone's been talking about, too. And you heard a couple, Max and a couple of players talk about things like, people have come in here and talked to me about tempo and motion.
Mm-hmm.
And so the quarterbacks are the ones at the center of that. So it's a little more different than you think. So I think they both had good springs, and I think moving into camp is when you hope to see, them go, whew, and I think you really hope to see Connor Wigman hit this.
Yeah,
and I think he will. I think you've seen enough signs out of him, and he's had enough of those days. But and I think with Wigman too, much like Johnny and any quarterback that is such the dual threat. Like you watch him against LSU in that game, field level, and you got like Harold Perkins and Ojolari and these guys chasing him, and they're closing on him, and then he hits another gear and turns it into an 8-yard gain instead of an 8-yard sack. Those are the type things you don't really see from him in practice, and you just won't from a guy that can do that. And I just feel like when the game starts, that guy picks it up, plays faster.
So when we get to running back, my observation has been I look at Ruben Owens and I see a player, even before he touches the ball, the way he stands, the way he commands the room, if you will. It's not a room, obviously. All three guys I'm impressed with, but there's something about seeing him physically when he touches the ball, even if it's not contact, that stands out to me.
He's a gifted athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think he could play any sport. He could be a track star. He could be I would imagine put him on a basketball court, but there's just the way he moves and that first step and that twitch and that he looks like the 5-star athlete. He looks like A-Chain had that look, even though he wasn't a 5-star, but A-Chain, you think of Christian Kirk, you think of Myles Garrett. Yeah. He didn't have it like he could never put it together, but Speedy Noel had it as an athlete. You see, he certainly got that. There's no question about it. He's got that. He had a really good spring. People have been talking about him from the day he got here with the work ethic and things like that. He's just got to learn a college offense as a true freshman. So this will be, in theory, these 15 practices should be his worst, and they were really impressive. So really exciting, Ruben Owens, and what his potential is for this year as a true freshman. Everyone I've talked to has said really good things about the running backs. Again, there's not an A-Chain, and Ruben Owens might end up being, as good or even a better college running back than Devon A-Chain, who I think was one of the best I've seen at A&M, and I don't think he gets enough credit. But don't sleep on Moss and Daniels either. Amari Daniels has really stepped up his game. And I think he needed to, and he's the guy that's been around the longest. And he really stepped his game up. I think he's feeling that sense of urgency. But that dude's, we talked about it a couple times, he's explosive and decisive. And I saw it against Auburn. I saw it against LSU a couple times. He's a guy I think people sleep on at that position. I think it's going to be and then Jimbo mentioned it. Le'Veon Moss had a really good second scrimmage. Jimbo himself told me he thinks he can be one of the better running backs to come through here. He told me that during last season. We saw a little bit of him last year, and it was impressive.
Yeah.
Think about UMass. Maybe it was Auburn as well. There were a couple games you go, okay. Those three are really talented. And Le'Veon Moss is tough as hell. He's tough, like physically tough, like plays through it, practices hard, and Rubens turned heads with his work ethic. And I think they've got a really good running backs coach right now. And I think Blackwell he's a guy that has made a strong first impression in that building. So I like the position. I wish they had a proven star coming back because A&M had A-Chain coming back. They had him coming back for a couple years. They had Spiller coming back for a couple years before that. It's been a while since there's been this much of an unknown, but I like the talent. They may add – I think they're going to end up adding the transfer running back from Minnesota as well, just to add – they need depth. 3 ain't enough in a college backfield. I'm sorry. Now, the good news is you got Anais Smith, who can be an emergency guy and who, by the way, could absolutely do that. He's proven it.
So that brings me to my next point, because I look at the deepest or the most talented position groups, and I see the defensive line obviously being very talented, but the wide receiver group, they need another guy. But you look at the talent there with Moose, with what I think Noah's going to do this year, with Evan, Jalen Preston, and, of course, Anais Smith.
That position was a tougher one this spring because Anais is coming back from injury, so he was limited, and rightfully so. Evan with the ankle sprain, and it was great to see him back out at practice a couple days ago, so he's back finishing out spring. And then Moose, I think he even got dinged up. I don't know if it was a couple practices or whatever it was. But we've seen what they can do. And really, Evans only scratched the surface of what he can do. I think of those catches against Bama and Ole Miss. That's just that he could do that every week, and just get more consistent, learn the offense, learn the intricacies of the route running stuff, getting open. Evan's ceiling is limitless. And the fact that he did what he did as a true freshman, he, like Connor Williams, can emerge as an absolute star this year in the SEC. We know what Anais is an all-SEC, all-purpose weapon. And then Moose, kind of like Evan, if you get two guys out there that can make multiple spectacular contested catches a game, and those are 2 or 3 starters, defenses are going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And A&M quarterbacks are going to thrive. And Moose has had a different mindset, different work ethic, a different way about him this spring. I think it's because of the way he ended the season. It was kind of like, oh, I could take this to the next level if I do this for one more season. What I did against them and do. So I love the position. Preston, you've got a veteran presence. The true freshman, Cottrell and Micah Tees, Raymond Cottrell and Micah Tees. We watch them out there and we're like, no, they look the part, and Tees can really go, can really run. I think they're pretty excited about those true freshmen. But the guy, out of all that, I think he's the best player on the offense this spring. He's the best player in maroon and white on that side of the ball this spring, and I don't think anyone would argue it, is Noah Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
He had the best spring maybe of anyone on the A&M team. He's a freaking dog, and he's almost 6'6".
He's strong, man.
And can run, and he's strong, and he's twitchy, which is rare for a 6'5" plus guy to have that kind of quickness in and out of his cuts. And what he can do is the same thing Evan and Moose can do, which is at 6'5", he can go up. He wants to fight you for the ball. He can take it. He can go get it. He could be a star, David, and he's got the work ethic, and he practices, and he's out there, and he's smart, really smart player, smart kid. That receiver position, if Noah Thomas can play like he's practiced, and there's no reason to think he can't. He had 2 touchdowns in like the last 3 games and was starting to kind of emerge. If he plays like he's practiced to go along with a senior Anais Smith to go along with a veteran, really exciting game breaker, Moose Muhammad, and I think a future longtime pro, potential All-American down the road, Nevin Stewart. That's a great receiving core. It's been a while since we've seen it. You know, you go back to the Christian Kirk, Josh Reynolds, and there's overlap, you know, with Mike Evans right there, and then there was a great lineage of receivers. Jimbo hasn't had this much to work with. And you combine that with the quarterback situation and Bobby Petrino, could be really exciting, especially when you mix in the tight end.
I was going to say, combine that with the young tight ends. And I think you've been very impressed with Theo.
Theo's another one. He's Noah, Chase, Theo. Theo's been almost like a cheat code out there at 250-plus pounds. He runs 4.5. He's very, very, very difficult to cover. Jake Johnson is a guy that's had a great spring. I've heard from multiple places that Jake has really looked good. We know what Donovan is. Donovan's proven already. That tight end position, I think Bobby Petrino is probably looking at that right now going, okay. And I think you're going to see them do a lot of stuff with two tight ends this year because those guys are so good. And Jake will now block, and I think it's because he's healthy. Not that he wouldn't, but I think he knows what he's doing now and got more cut because he was a great receiver, almost like a big wide receiver in high school. Jake's blocking, and he's been really effective at it, and Theo will get after you. He's so big. He doesn't look like a tackle, but he looks like an NFL tight end, and you can't run with him. Linebackers and safeties are too small, and linebackers aren't fast enough. So what he's going to do to pressure deep safeties, you want to go with two deep safeties, he's going to get out there and split those safeties. You know what that opens up? Not to mention the fact that he I'm telling you that could be Johnson and Theo, and then to go with Donovan, and I think Donovan can be more of an underneath worker. And I think you're going to see the tight ends be a real weapon this year, and that was a position that I think maybe from start to spring till end probably opened the eyes of this coaching staff in terms of more than any other.
So D-line, we previewed it earlier, just how deep they are.
Yep.
And tomorrow we're not going to see that much from a D-line. It's a spring game on a 60-yard field, but those 22s are older. You got McKinley coming back.
Yep.
You got Fidel.
And McKinley's been banged up. Fidel Diggs, seeing him back has been great. You got Walter Nolan's lost weight. I know people, what did he tweet last night? Quit worrying about Twitter. Let the losers from other fan bases see a tweet saying I'm over it or whatever it was Walter tweeted. You and I were talking about this. This is a rant. Let the losers from other fan bases go beg. Let them go, hey, it won't be bad for you here in Knoxville. Come to Norman, come to Austin. Fayetteville's calling you. Just let them do that. Walter Nolan had a really good spring. He's lost. I think he looks so much better. It's like it's almost like he's gained weight, but he looks slimmer, if that makes any sense.
He's added muscle.
Yeah. There you go, David.
To put my little knowledge in here.
But he looks good, and he's practiced good. The two guys that were mentioned to me specifically yesterday, too, they said both Shamars, really good. Dindy made some plays in the scrimmage. He's new to the rotation. Yep. LT Overton looks so good, and I know Sandhop's been talking about what he looks like. He's leaned up. He's playing a lot of stand-up linebacker. I think he and Eni White will give Durkin that flexibility when we talk about, like, hey, what are they going to do with it? Sometimes when they want three out there, it might be one of them.
Yeah.
To go along with all that depth you have on the D-line. But the two Shamars, Stewart and Turner, are guys that have been talked about a lot this spring too. More than once they've been mentioned to me as to how consistently they've performed. And they need that. Those guys have NFL bodies today, and One of them's in year 2, one of them's going in year 3, and they're both 5s. People forget Shamar Turner was a 5-star.
Yeah.
And played like it against LSU last year and played like it as a true freshman before he got hurt. So you got those guys. And then at linebacker's been – they like York and Sanford. Now, I don't know how far down the road that is. That's the problem. I just don't know what you would expect from those guys as true freshmen. But I think they're really excited about what they've shown this spring.
But what about the Durkin effect there, that he's focusing his time there? Yeah. That has to help.
I would hope it would. And logically, you'd think it would. It's his position. It's what he typically has coached.
I look at it as like a Petrino factor, right? You put Petrino taking care of that offense where his specialty. We know Durkin's a very good defensive coordinator. His specialty is linebacker. That's where you struggle. You put your best guy there. Yeah. It should help considerably.
It should. It should. And I like to think it will. You got some, not a lot, but you got some experience there. Adrian Cooper got banged up a little bit. He's been good when he's practiced. Mm-hmm. He's looked like you hoped he would look. Chris Russell, I don't know how much he's I need to specifically ask on Russell, but I know I've been out there a couple times where he's not suited up. So that would hurt the depth there. Martrell Harris has to be really good this year. I think he has to be. He's uber athletic. He looked disruptive at times out there last year. Florida game, I think even a little against LSU, he looks disruptive when you can kind of cut him loose. So he's one. Honestly, I'd probably need to ask again a couple people about like his spring in general, because I don't have an answer either way on that. But I do know that to me, he has to be a guy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an option there. We don't need to go too deep into safety because I've talked about how good I think that position is. I've talked a lot this spring that I think it's going to be a team strength, from Damani coming back to Jordan Gilbert, who we don't talk about enough. Jared Kerr, go back and watch that Alabama game in the second half. Jacoby Matthews. Mm-hmm. Jacoby Matthews, people forget, like about a week into fall camp last year, people were going, he's going to start as a true freshman.
I remember.
Exactly. And hey, look, we can go on and on. He got arrested in the less than 4 ounces, of weed thing. 60% of the state or whatever it is, that's a ticket. That's a ticket. In this county and in BCS, it's an arrest. And people will get on the cops about it, and I understand, like, we all grow up going, I'm a person that thinks, I'm not into the criticize police thing, even if it's complaining here locally about, our athletes. I think it's a law thing, and I'm not blaming, and we're going way off here, but I'm not blaming kids for breaking a law that isn't really
a law everywhere.
It's inconsistent everywhere, and it's legal in so many states. So it's a whole nother rabbit hole. But my point is, what they're doing is doing what they're supposed to do, what the law says. And if they change the law, which it is different in other parts of this state, then they don't have to arrest guys for that, and it's a ticket. And I really want to see us get there. But anyway, I went way off the rails there.
But you're comfortable with safety.
Yeah, but going back, I'm really comfortable, and I'm comfortable with Jacoby. He's serving a suspension right now. I announced that yesterday. I think that'll be short-lived. I think he's been really good within the program, in terms of being an A&M athlete in the football program, and then what he's doing on the field, he can be really, really good. And then I didn't mention Bryce. I saved him for last because I think Bryce Anderson's versatility, people keep talking about what a leader he's been. People keep talking about what a difference maker he's been out there. Bryce is on the very short list when you talk about defenders that had the best spring in Maroon White. Bryce has had a really, really good one, and that shouldn't surprise anyone that's really followed his high school career, his recruitment, and even watched him in limited capacity last year.
I love hearing that because you've mentioned a couple guys that are all together in Bryce and Connor and Ruben. setting a certain tone, and it's kind of like different. You got guys entering their second year. You got a freshman who's kind of learning the way, and they're all this second spring setting a certain tone. Let's finish up with cornerback.
Okay, and one more thing about what you just said. So much has been made about that recruiting class and the guys that left, the Denver Harris, the Chris Marshall, the P.J. Williams, Anthony Lucas. The class is decimated. No, it's not. Don't lie. Just try not to lie. Try not to lie.
It's good throw.
Just tell I had to be really good or I was going to hit that camera. But try not to lie. Like, just accurately say what the frick is going on. So, how many of these guys have we mentioned that were from that class? If Texas A&M wins and I didn't talk enough about guys like Eni and Silla at defensive end, that they need that pass rush. If A&M wins a championship, like there is enough from that class to be the nucleus of a SEC championship playoff team from one class. And they're going into year 2. Now, the key is to keep them for year 3. So this story is not completely written yet. And that's why A&M needs to win this year. So the mood's up. People are happy. People can try to get in their ear, and the kids can go like this. No, I'm on a path to the NFL. I'm 1 year away from that. We made a big jump this year. We're gonna win the SEC next year. They need that mindset. And then you don't see the attrition because kids know. It's kind of like, why aren't guys leaving A&M basketball right now in the offseason when kids are leaving everywhere? I know some of the guys at the very bottom are because they want to play.
They won.
Buzz is probably shaking their hand saying best of luck to you. But, yeah, they won, and they believe they're going to win even more, and they've bought it. So I do think winning this year is essential because just keeping them for their second year, there's no medal or award for that. But they've kept so much more talent out of that class. And so many guys performed well last year from that class as true freshmen and now could make a big jump. So to me, if you look at that, I'm beyond fired up about the class of 2022 and what they mean this year for this football team. And then finally at corner, Grimes has been good. McCall is a guy that's adjusting, and he's really talented. He's really young. Yeah. He's from that same class.
Right.
And now he's at a new school. So that one's not going to happen overnight, but I think we'll see him play this year, and he'll work his way in and start playing. He looks good physically. But Grimes needs to be a dude. And Tyreek Chappelle and Deuce Harmon's been hurt, so you didn't get to see him. But Chappelle had some non-football stuff going on, not in a bad way, family-related stuff, and missed a lot. And he finally came back here this week, and so they were really excited about that because Tyreek Chappelle is one of those guys that you hope and need to kind of take a star turn. He looked good as a true freshman. He was quietly really good last year when there was so much so many moving parts there. He was really good. He's one of the better. I think he's one of the better cover men in the SEC. He doesn't get credit for it. But now you need him to take a jump and be locked down. Yeah. So, unfortunately, didn't get to see as much of him this spring. But you hope. But getting him back was good.
At some point, we will wrap up what we saw. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit
spring game.
Yeah,
I mean, look, there's some stuff to take away from it. I hope it looks good enough to where the people walk away talking positively about it. I think that's all. It's more of a fun day for everyone to come back in town. They do the halftime game. It's fun for the letterman. More that than it actually mattering. It's not even one of 15 practices anymore. It's what it's become. It's a recruiting event, and there are going to be a lot of them here, and Bronny and Howell are going to keep you guys occupied about it. And I think there'll be some commitments ultimately for us to talk about coming out of it in the next couple weeks. But it's a recruiting event. It's a let's get everyone in town, coincide it with Parents Weekend and baseball and the 12th Man Champions Council and the Lettermans, and it's just fun.
Yep.
But it's not even one of 15 practices. And I'm sure if college coaches could do it, everybody talked about, well, do we scrimmage against another team in the spring? Coaches, a lot of them would probably be like, Yeah, I don't need all that either. I would rather just have one more actual scrimmage without people watching and just get 2.5 hours of real work in.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's a fun day, and that's what it probably should be more than anything else.
Luchador Podcast brought to you by Academy of Sports and Outdoors. Oh, by the way, tomorrow we're going to have a post-game wrap with CT and Brandon Leone after the spring game. So we'll break it all down. Thanks so much for watching.